my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. I have some fun books to talk about, but first, projects. If you want to hear about my crafting, stick around for a minute. If not, skip ahead to the books. But first, I'm wearing my sweater. This is the sweater that I finished last week. I've blocked it, and I really like it. I think my only complaint is the sleeves are a little long. I have to roll them up and they're a little on the baggy side, but that's fine. I think after blocking it, it did make the sleeves a little longer. So if anyone has tips on how to kind of shrink up the sleeves a little, let me know. But other than that, I'm really happy with how the sweater turned out, and I am doing some more knitting. So I am doing a scrappy scarf. It's a bit of a shawl, it's that triangle shape, and I am making it out of some leftover yarn that I have had, and I am doing this as a project to switch over to continental knitting. And if you know anything about knitting, there are the two types. You can throw with the one hand, or you can have the thread wrapped around your hand and you pick it up from the left hand, which is typically referred to as continental style. And I know that there is more potential to knit faster if I switch to continental, but I'm just not used to it. And I don't really love it, and I feel like my tension's kind of everywhere. But I figure this shawl is a great idea to practice continental because it's just straight up knit, 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 knit all the way across. And so I'm giving it a try. I do think I'm getting better, and we'll see if I decide to stick with this method or try the other. As for other crafts, first, look at these flowers. My husband brought me flowers this morning, and they're huge. They're so pretty. I love them. So I have these beautiful flowers behind me, but the other craft. Look at this lamp. Is this not such a pretty lamp? So we went and bought this vase from the ceramic store down in town, and then we drilled a hole in it, turned it into a lamp, got the lampshade, and I am kind of obsessed. We have this one, and I'll put a picture up of the other one that we made as well, and I'm liking them so much. My big problem with lighting is that I often think that lamps are ugly, and I never notice them in people's houses. I always think, oh yeah, that's supposed to be there, it's beautiful. But when I go to a lamp store, I hardly ever find lamps that I think, wow, that's so pretty, I want it in my house. I usually think, why did they make it like that? I don't know. And this way, it's something that I really love because I am obsessed with this vase. I think it has such a cool effect, and I am just so happy with how the lamp turned out. So I want to get way more creative with cool lighting solutions. So if you have any ideas for cool lighting solutions, let me know in the comments down below. But with that crafting update, let's jump into what I have read this last week. Now, this first book I read, and I don't really want to talk about because I really wish I hadn't read it. And this book is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This book is following our main character, Rosemary, who has this sweet romance with this woman that she met at a farmer's market. But then she starts ignoring some big red flags, and we'll see what secrets Ash is hiding. And this seemed like a good premise, but I, like the protagonist, ignored way too many red flags where I should have stopped this book way before the end. Now, the next thing is spoilers, so make sure you skip if you don't want the ending of this book spoiled. So skip ahead. But the ending of this book ended up just being about cannibalism. Now, I understand that is a plot device that many authors use, especially in this genre. So my problem is I enjoy a good horror thriller sometimes. I like that tension and that mystery, and I end up picking up these books and I don't want to look them up because I don't want to know what happens in the end. And then I am jump scared by cannibalism and it puts me off eating for a week. So if anyone has a good suggestion on how to vet my books better, because after this book, it has happened far too many times recently, and it is just my fault. So I am going to try to Google my books a little bit, but if anyone has advice on how to find out if there is that in the end of the book, without giving away the endings of these thriller horror type books, let me know. Now, the next book was a recommendation from the channel Triumphal Reads, so I will make sure to link that down below. And I picked up Plight of the Living Dead, What Real-Life Zombies Reveal About Our World and Ourselves by Matt Simon. And this book does do what it says in the title. It is going through these different parasites, different organisms, different things that take over other animals and insects and basically become real-life zombies. And that is just fascinating. I really think that that can be fun to learn about. It is so interesting to see these different bugs and animals that act contrary to their nature, but it's because they have been taken over by these parasites, and how the parasites thrive through doing this to other organisms. This book itself was very pop science-y, which I think is fine for a book like this. I don't need to know the nitty-gritty. I just want to hear about some cool bugs, but it is very pop science-y and maybe doesn't go into depth on any of these subjects. So if that's what you're looking for, I don't think that this is really the book for you, because it is a very light overview. The one thing I didn't really appreciate is the author, I felt like, was going outside of the scope of what I wanted from the book. And so he just goes really hard on determinism and that there is no such thing as free will. And well, I do think that there is some evidence to show that, yeah, there's a lot of things in nature that might control how people and animals and insects live their lives. I don't think that he was giving the whole free will debate a very nuanced take, and instead felt like he was saying, well, since this ant didn't have any free will in its life, people don't either, and God doesn't exist, which I just felt like was overreaching a little bit and a bit of a bleak and fatalistic kind of view on humanity. While I entered this book really excited to learn about the different real-life zombies, I feel like I left kind of feeling depressed about the state of humanity, and I don't think that's what I wanted out of this book. So I think there was a bit of my own mismatch of expectations about what this book was going to go into. I just feel like as a philosophy book, it wasn't great, but as a pop science book, it was fun. This did lead me down a little bit of a rabbit hole looking at cool videos of bugs that had been taken over by fungus and were still walking around while all hollowed out. Creepy, but super cool. So this next book was a recommendation from Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and I picked up the book Red Clay by Charles B. Fancher. And this is one of those multi-generational family sagas that is set in a plantation at the end of the Civil War and through the Reconstruction era. And so this is following the white plantation owners as well as the Black people who were enslaved and how they rebuilt after. And their families are very interwoven. None of it was too shocking for me plot-wise, but something that I really loved was that the author was pulling on his own personal family history to tell this story. And this ended up being just a 5-star book for me, because not only was it well written and I really connected with the characters, but it is set during a time period that I feel like I haven't read enough fiction about. I have read quite a few nonfiction that have covered parts of the Reconstruction era, but I don't feel like I've read very many fictional books that have been set during this time period. I think seeing that time period through a fictional lens was really powerful. Now, this next book was a recommendation from Caitlin at Bandy's Books, and I read The Other Olympians, Fascism, Queerness, and the Making of Modern Sports by Michael Waters. This is the story of the Olympics and follows the story of a few trans athletes, revolving mostly around the Olympics that took place in Nazi Germany, and following these athletes throughout their lives. And this was just fascinating. Not only did it talk about these gender non-conforming people who participated in sport, but it also gives such an interesting look at the history of the Olympics and the history of women's sports, and brings to light a lot of current issues that people are facing today. It was so fascinating to see the history of some of these people. In the description, it says, Michael Waters uncovers for the first time the gripping true stories of Kobe, Weston, and other pioneering trans and intersex athletes from their era. With dogged research and cinematic flair, Waters also tracks how International Olympic Committee members ignored Nazi Germany's atrocities in order to pull off the Berlin Games, a partnership that ultimately influenced the IOC's nearly century-long obsession with surveilling and cataloging gender. I think it was really interesting to see where some of these culture wars originated from and how it is so much born out of ignorance and misogyny and fear. And so this book was just really excellent. I highly recommend it. And that is what I have read the last week. If you have thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments down below. If you have suggestions on how to make fun lighting, let me know as well. And I will see you all in the next one.